What do we really know about St. Patrick's Day in the Irish culture? 34.7 million U.S. residents have an Irish ancestry, according to History.com. Also, Irish is the nation's second largest ancestry group. There's approximately 144,000 current U.S. residents that are from Ireland. On to the topic of St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day is March 17th each year. It's celebrated in honor of St. Patrick himself. It started as a religious feast day for the Saint of Ireland and now is an international festival that celebrates the Irish culture. So what do people do to celebrate St. Patrick's Day? There are parades. In Chicago, they dye the river green. Green shows the color of spring and is very popular among the Irish culture. Along with the parades, they have parties and just celebrate St. Patrick's life, to say. It has been celebrated for over 1,000 years. When it started with just the Irish culture, but now everyone within the country, the United States, everywhere, they all celebrate it. Whether they just have a feast or they go to parties, anything like that, that's how it gets celebrated. St. Patrick himself was one of Christianity's most known figures. He ministered Christianity in Ireland in the 5th century. He is known for being one of Christianity's most known figures. During St. Patrick's Day, people celebrate by wearing green, like I said. Green symbolizes spring, which shows that is the time period that this is celebrated, March being in the spring. When people think of St. Patrick's Day, they also think of corned beef and cabbage. When I first heard that, I wondered why. Corned beef, come to know, was very cheap back then, so that was what they could get their hands on to celebrate with a big feast. And when we think of cabbage, they thought that it was a spring vegetable and that as well was cheap. So they came about to celebrate by feasting on corned beef and cabbage in large amounts. Another thing that is very popular is drinking Guinness, which is an Irish stout. A lot of people, when they celebrate, will drink Guinness because it's an Irish tradition. Back on the topic of St. Patrick himself. St. Patrick was not actually Irish, according to USA Today. Patrick was born in Britain, but he was later kidnapped by Irish pirates. After 17 years of being captured, he was known to be a slave. After the 17 years, he escaped Ireland and found his way home, but he later returned to Ireland as a missionary. That is why he is known so well for the fight for Christianity in Ireland. March 17th was the day of St. Patrick's death. His death was very, I guess you could say, unknown. No one's really sure how he died, but there are a lot of stories that you could hear. Some say he was surrounded by snakes, but no one really knows for sure. But they are estimating that it was on March 17th, which is why that is when St. Patrick's Day is celebrated. So, not many really know the real reason why St. Patrick's Day is celebrated. They are used to the customs of having parades and drinking and feasting, but not really understanding who St. Patrick was himself and why this is such a great way to celebrate in his life. He had made an impact on the Irish culture and stood up for what he believed in, and I think he did a good job in doing that. So now we all know why we celebrate St. Patrick's Day, and it's not just about the parades or the drinking Guinness or feasting on corned beef and cabbage. There's a lot more to what St. Patrick did for himself and for the Irish culture by sticking up for his beliefs. And even with being a slave for the 17 years, he fought that and showed what Christianity really is. So I think this is a great way to make a day to celebrate St. Patrick himself. And I think the Irish culture really gets a lot of attention for this. And I think it's a great thing, seeing how the Irish culture is the second largest culture in the nation. So they deserve this attention, and so does St. Patrick himself. So this is why we celebrate St. Patrick's Day, and also a description of who St. Patrick was himself.